welcome to the garden. Today I bring you my ultimate guide to dividing and transplanting seedlings. The first thing I'm going to do is water them in. This will really soften up that soil, almost like mud, so that the roots can just slide apart. We always want to handle our seedlings by the leaf. Even a very light pressure can cause damage to that very delicate stem. And to remove these, we want to get underneath those roots. So I'm using a fork and digging down just about as deep as I can. And holding that leaf, we'll try and lift the plant up. Depending on how far along your seedlings are and how densely planted they are, you may need to pull out a cluster of plants. And from here, we can isolate them down to individual plants. If you're having trouble, you can actually submerge those roots in water, and that'll break them apart even easier. I'm just gonna pick a spot and dig down as deep as that bottom root. Ideally, we want that root all the way to the bottom, perfectly straight. If you have to, you can coil it around, but you do not want it to fold or kink. That'll cut off its supply, kind of like a garden hose. We'll get it right about to the same depth it was at, or slightly deeper, just to anchor it. I'll lightly nestle that soil in around and give it a very delicate little press on the surface. Here's another plant we've isolated, and I'm spacing these apart about 4 to 6 inches. You'll find the recommended spacing at the back of your seed packet. You can see that taproot there. We'll get that down as deep as possible, and then we'll nestle our seedling. Give it a slight press so that when we water in, it doesn't sink back down. And I'm also spacing these a few inches from the edge of the pot. The soil tends to dry out really fast at the edge, so this will keep them nice and moist. I want to give them some fresh water right away, but I'm trying to water around them, just watering the soil nearby. That way we don't bombard them with heavy water, and they may get knocked over, they may get stuck to the soil, or even buried. This is best to do on a cloudy day to give our plants a break from the harsh sun. If you are planting on a sunny day, you want to give them some shade, and I like to use dried leaves. It's just a really simple method, but you can use an upside down container or whatever you can to give them some shade. Otherwise, they can wilt in a matter of minutes. I start most of my plants in small containers or seed cells to save space and to get a head start in cooler weather. Once these plants start producing their first true leaves, they're just about ready to go out into the garden. You can see here on the spinach, the seed leaves are very thin, whereas the true leaves are much more broad. I also planted some seeds directly into the garden at the same time, but these are way behind because they were under the snow just last week. But if you've been growing these indoors, it's important to acclimate them first before taking them out into the garden. So we can leave them out for maybe an hour on the first day, 2 hours the next day, and over the course of a week or two, they'll get acclimated to the intense sun, strong winds, and harsh cold. It's still too cold to plant our tomatoes out into the garden, so to bide us some time, I'm going to up-pot them. And I just have a tiny bit of potting soil down here at the bottom, because tomatoes we're going to plant very deep, and they can actually grow roots all along the stem, strengthening the plant. So I'm going to try to remove these little seed cells here. Hopefully the soil will stay intact. If we pack the soil down a little bit when we plant our seeds, the soil won't fall apart quite so easily. Now when we have two plants this close together, we either want to divide them or just remove the weaker of the two. So again, I've wet that soil so it's nice and muddy and loose. And I'm going to try to very gently tease them apart. Perfect. We can get those roots all the way down to the bottom. I'm trying not to touch the leaves too much on these so they don't spread the blight. And we'll just backfill in and bury that stem. So we'll do the other one the same way. I've just got a tiny bit of soil at the bottom. That way we can plant it nice and deep but the roots won't be sticking out of the bottom of the pot. And I'm just using a mix of potting soil, compost, and native soil from the garden. You can just use potting soil and that'll work perfectly fine. Now I'll just water these in and give them a little break from the sun. So I'll find a shady corner of the greenhouse for them. And don't forget to label these. I'm going to write directly onto the pot. I won't actually bring these out into the garden until it gets above 50 degrees Fahrenheit at night. They can certainly handle colder temps, but their growth will slow down drastically. And if it ever gets below freezing, we want to bring them back inside. I'm not doing the peppers yet because they're in a little bit larger pots. I'd like them to go directly from these containers out into the garden. So again, we want to wait until those nighttime temps get about to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. When it comes to finer seedlings like these poppies, I actually want to plant them as little clusters. It's not worth risking damaging the plant by breaking them apart into individual plants. And that should be everything you need to know about dividing and transplanting your seedlings. If you found this video helpful, let me know in the comments or with a thumbs up. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.